What happens when a wife thinks a cruel game is only a joke, until her husband serves her divorce papers in public? Can one night's humiliation unravel a marriage, a family, and her own lies all at once? This is how lawful revenge feels when you're the one who crossed the line. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The kitchen smelled like burnt coffee and regret. I stood at the counter, frantically deleting text messages from Derek, while Eli's footsteps echoed down the hallway. My fingers moved quickly across the screen, erasing evidence of our 3-hour conversation that had kept me giggling until 2 in the morning. "Morning, beautiful," I called out, trying to sound casual as I poured coffee into Eli's favorite mug. The one Hazel had painted for Father's Day last year, with crooked letters spelling "World's Best Dad" in purple glitter. Eli appeared in the doorway, his brown hair still messy from sleep. At 35, my husband still looked like the software engineer who'd swept me off my feet at that college party 10 years ago. Quiet, thoughtful, reliable. Sometimes too reliable. "You were up late last night," he said. Not quite a question, but not quite a statement either. His grey eyes searched my face as he accepted the coffee mug. "Just work emails," I lied smoothly, turning back to the counter. You know how Peterson gets when quarterly reports are due, sending messages at all hours like we don't have lives outside the office. The phone in my hand buzzed. Derek's name flashed across the screen with a preview. "Had fun chatting last night, can't wait to..." I quickly flipped the phone face down, but not before Eli's eyes caught the movement. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the way it did when he was processing information he didn't like. "Daddy!" Hazel's voice rang out from the stairway, followed by the thunder of 7-year-old feet racing toward the kitchen. She burst through the doorway in her favorite unicorn pajamas, dark curls bouncing around her shoulders. "Are you and Mommy fighting again?" The question hit like a slap. Eli and I exchanged glances over our daughter's head. "What makes you think we're fighting, sweetheart?" Eli asked, kneeling down to Hazel's level. His voice was gentle, patient. Everything mine wasn't when I was caught off guard. "I heard Mommy laughing really loud last night when I got up to use the bathroom," Hazel said, her big brown eyes, Eli's eyes, looking between us with the unsettling perception children sometimes possess. "But you weren't laughing with her. You were just lying there." Heat crept up my neck. I forced a bright smile and pulled Hazel into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Everything's fine, baby. Mommy was just talking to an old friend from college. You know how grown-ups get when they're catching up." "Derek Linton." Eli's voice was carefully neutral, but I caught the edge underneath. My stomach clenched. "How did you..." "You said his name, twice, around midnight." Eli stood slowly, his movements deliberate. "I thought you said you lost touch with him after graduation." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. Hazel was still pressed against my side, and I could feel her tension as she picked up on the undercurrents flowing between her parents. "We reconnected on social media," I said, keeping my voice light. "It's not a big deal, Eli. People are allowed to have friends." "Of course they are." He took a sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm just surprised you didn't mention it." "I don't have to run every conversation by you," I snapped, then immediately regretted the harshness when Hazel flinched. I softened my tone. "I mean, it's not like I need permission to talk to old friends. We're married, not joined at the hip." Eli set down his mug with more force than necessary. Coffee sloshed over the rim, staining the counter. "I never said you needed permission, Marilla. I just think it's strange that you're suddenly secretive about phone calls." "I'm not being secretive. You're being paranoid." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Hazel pulled away from my hug, her small face creased with worry. "Are you getting divorced?" she whispered. "No," I said quickly, shooting Eli a warning look. "Nobody's getting divorced. Daddy's just being silly." But Eli wasn't looking at me anymore. His attention was fixed on my phone, which had buzzed again. Derek's name was clearly visible on the screen, along with another message preview. I grabbed the phone and shoved it into my pocket, but the damage was done. Eli's expression had shifted from suspicion to something darker. Disappointment, maybe, or resignation. "I should get ready for work," he said quietly. "Hazel, finish your cereal. Your mum will drive you to school today." He left the kitchen without another word, his bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. I heard the guest bathroom door close with a soft click. Hazel climbed onto her stool at the breakfast bar, her cereal forgotten. "Mummy, why does Daddy look sad?" I busied myself wiping up the spilled coffee, avoiding her gaze. "Daddy's not sad, honey. He's just tired. Work has been stressful lately." "Is that why he's been sleeping in the guest room?" The paper towel tore in my hands. "What?" "I saw him coming out of the guest room yesterday morning when I went to brush my teeth. His pillow was on the bed." My chest tightened. When had Eli started sleeping separately? And why hadn't I noticed? "Sometimes grown-ups sleep in different rooms when one of them snores," I said weakly. Hazel tilted her head, considering this. "But Daddy doesn't snore. You do." Out of the mouths of babes. I forced another smile and ruffled her hair. "Eat your breakfast, smarty pants. We don't want to be late for school." As Hazel dutifully spooned cereal into her mouth, I pulled out my phone to read Derek's messages. The first was innocent enough, just reminiscing about our college days. But the second made my pulse quicken. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight at Tina's party. It's been way too long." I'd forgotten Derek would be there. Tina Calder, my best friend since high school, was throwing one of her infamous gatherings at the rooftop bar downtown. She'd been planning it for weeks, promising it would be epic and unforgettable. The irony wasn't lost on me now. I typed back quickly, "Can't wait. It'll be just like old times." The response came immediately. "Better than old times. We're not kids anymore." A thrill ran through me, followed immediately by guilt. I glanced toward the hallway where I could hear the shower running. Eli was probably standing under the hot spray, trying to wash away whatever he was feeling about this morning's confrontation. I should go to him. I should explain about Derek, reassure him that it was innocent, that I loved my husband and my family, and would never do anything to jeopardize what we'd built together. Instead, I deleted the message thread and started planning what I'd wear tonight. The open plan office buzzed with the usual Monday morning energy. I settled into my cubicle with a fresh cup of coffee and a sense of determination. Whatever weirdness had happened at home, I could shake it off here. At Peterson & Associates, I was Marilla Voss, competent office administrator and master of workplace social dynamics. "Someone looks chipper this morning," Sophie Lynn observed from the neighboring cubicle. At 28, Sophie was one of the newer hires, earnest and hard-working in a way that sometimes made me feel ancient. "Just excited for tonight," I said, pulling up my email. "Tina's throwing a party at that new rooftop place. Should be fun." "Rooftop bar?" Sophie's eyebrows rose. "Fancy. Special occasion?" "Just because. That's Tina for you. Any excuse to get dressed up and drink expensive cocktails." I laughed, but it sounded forced even to my own ears. "You should come. I'm sure she wouldn't mind another person." Sophie smiled politely but shook her head. "Thanks, but Monday night parties aren't really my thing. I'm more of a quiet evening at home type." "God, you sound like my husband," I said without thinking. Eli would rather stay home and watch documentaries about computer programming than go out and actually live a little. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, and I immediately felt disloyal. But Sophie was looking at me with interest now, and something about her attention made me continue. "Don't get me wrong, I love him," I said quickly, "but sometimes I feel like I'm married to a robot. Everything has to be scheduled and planned. Spontaneity gives him hives." "That doesn't sound so bad," Sophie said carefully. "Reliable is good, right? Especially with a kid." Reliable is great when you're filing taxes or fixing the garbage disposal. But what about passion? What about excitement? I minimized my email and turned to face her fully. When's the last time your boyfriend surprised you with something completely unexpected? Sophie's cheeks reddened. I don't have a boyfriend right now. Well, when you do, make sure he's not like Eli. Sweet guy, great father, but about as thrilling as watching paint dry. I was exaggerating, of course. Eli had his moments, like last month when he'd surprised me with tickets to that concert I'd mentioned wanting to see. Or the way he still brought me coffee in bed on Saturday mornings, even after 10 years together. But Derek's messages were fresh in my mind, and the memory of feeling desired and interesting was intoxicating. When had Eli stopped looking at me like I was fascinating? When had our conversation shifted from dreams and possibilities to grocery lists and school schedules? Marilla, can I see you for a moment? I looked up to find Mr. Peterson standing beside my cubicle, his expression unreadable. My manager was a thin, serious man in his 50s who rarely engaged in casual conversation. Of course, I said, following him toward his corner office. Sophie watched us go with curious eyes. Peterson closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit. His office was sparse and professional, decorated only with his diplomas and a single photo of his wife and grown children. Is everything all right at home, Marilla? He asked without preamble. The question caught me off guard. I'm sorry. You've seemed distracted lately. Last week you mixed up the Henderson and Martinez files, and this morning I noticed you were on your phone quite a bit before official work hours. Heat crept up my neck. I was just handling some personal messages before starting my day. It won't happen again. I'm not trying to micromanage your personal life, Peterson said, his tone gentle but firm. But this is a small office, and when one person is off their game, it affects everyone. Some of the other staff have mentioned concerns about workplace gossip and professionalism. My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? Nothing specific. Just that perhaps we all need to remember that this is a professional environment. Personal matters should be kept separate from work duties. I nodded, trying to look appropriately chastened while internally fuming. Someone had complained about me. Probably Sophie, with her holier-than-thou attitude about quiet evenings at home. I understand completely, I said. It won't be an issue going forward. Good. I'm glad we could clear this up. Peterson smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're a valuable member of our team, Marilla. I'd hate to see personal distractions impact your performance. I left his office with my cheeks burning and my pride bruised. As I walked back to my cubicle, I caught Sophie quickly looking away from her computer screen. She'd definitely been watching the office door, waiting to see if I'd emerge victorious or defeated. My phone buzzed with a text from Tina. Can't wait for tonight. I have the perfect dare picked out for you. Despite my irritation with Peterson and Sophie, I felt a smile tug at my lips. Tina's parties were legendary for their games of truth or dare, and I'd never back down from a challenge. Whatever she had planned, I was ready for it. I typed back, bring it on. I'm feeling dangerous tonight. The response came immediately. That's my girl. Eli's going to die when he sees what I have in store. A flicker of unease passed through me. Tina had never been Eli's biggest fan. She thought he was too serious, too boring for someone like me. She'd made no secret of her opinion that I'd settled when I married him. But that was just Tina being Tina. She'd been pushing boundaries since high school, always trying to get me to be more adventurous, more rebellious. It was part of her charm. I glanced over at Sophie, who was studiously focused on her computer screen. Let her judge me all she wanted. Tonight I was going to prove that I wasn't just some boring suburban wife who'd lost her spark. I was still Marilla Voss, the girl who'd been the life of every college party, who'd never met a dare she wouldn't take. The rest of the workday crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a little thrill, wondering if it was Derek or Tina with more details about tonight. I found myself checking my reflection in my computer screen, wondering if Derek would notice that I'd kept myself in good shape, that motherhood hadn't dulled my edges the way it had some of my friends. By 5 o'clock, I was practically vibrating with anticipation. I gathered my things quickly, eager to get home and start getting ready. "Have fun at your party," Sophie said as I passed her cubicle. "Oh, I will," I replied, and for the first time all day, I meant it completely. The rooftop bar was everything Tina had promised: sleek, sophisticated, with twinkling lights strung overhead and the city skyline glittering in the distance. I'd chosen my outfit carefully: a black dress that hugged my curves without being too obvious, heels that made my legs look endless, and the diamond earrings Eli had given me for our anniversary. "You look incredible," Tina squealed as she wrapped me in a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and wine. My best friend was in her element, playing hostess in a red dress that left little to the imagination. "Mason's already here and Derek just arrived. This is going to be so much fun." I scanned the crowd, spotting familiar faces from our old crowd mixed with Tina's newer friends. Mason Calder, Tina's husband, was nursing a beer by the railing, looking mildly uncomfortable in the way he always did at his wife's parties. And there, near the bar, was Derek. He'd filled out since college, his shoulders broader, his jaw more defined. Success in real estate had been good to him. When he spotted me, his face lit up with a grin that sent butterflies dancing in my stomach. "Marilla Voss," he said, approaching with 2 cocktails in hand. "You haven't aged a day." "Liar," I laughed, accepting the drink. "But I'll take it." "Where's the husband?" Derek asked, glancing around. "Parking the car," I said. It wasn't entirely a lie. Eli had dropped me off at the entrance while he looked for a spot. But I didn't mention that he'd been quiet during the entire drive, or that he'd asked twice if I was sure I wanted to go out on a Monday night. "Well, I'm looking forward to meeting him properly," Derek said. "It's been, 10 years since graduation? I barely remember him from back then." That stung more than it should have. Eli had been quieter in college, more focused on his studies than the party scene. He'd been the steady presence in my chaotic final semester, the one who'd helped me pass statistics and held my hair back when I'd had too much to drink at senior week. "He's a good guy," I said, and meant it. "Just different from us." "Different how?" Before I could answer, Eli appeared at my elbow. He'd changed from his work clothes into dark jeans and a button-down shirt that brought out his eyes. He looked handsome in his quiet way, and I felt a sudden surge of affection for him. "Eli, this is Derek Linton," I said. "Derek, my husband." The 2 men shook hands, and I watched Derek take Eli's measure. There was something predatory in his gaze that made me uncomfortable. "So you're the lucky guy who snagged our Marilla," Derek said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm the lucky one," Eli replied simply, and the sincerity in his voice made my chest tight. The evening progressed with drinks and laughter, and the kind of nostalgic conversations that happen when old friends reunite. I found myself relaxing, enjoying the attention, the feeling of being interesting and desired. Derek kept finding reasons to touch my arm or lean close when he talked, and I didn't discourage him. Eli stayed close to my side, polite but reserved. I could tell he was analyzing the group dynamics, the way he always did in social situations. It was both endearing and irritating. "All right, everyone," Tina called out, clapping her hands for attention. "Time for the main event, truth or dare." A cheer went up from the crowd. This was Tina's signature party game, the thing that made her gatherings legendary. I'd participated dozens of times over the years, and I'd never backed down from a challenge. We arranged ourselves in a loose circle on the plush outdoor furniture. Tina produced a bottle and spun it with theatrical flair. The game started tamely enough. Someone admitted to a celebrity crush. Someone else had to call their ex and hang up. Then the bottle pointed to me. "Marilla," Tina's eyes gleamed with mischief. "Truth or dare?" "Dare," I said without hesitation. I'd never chosen truth, not once in all the years we'd been playing this game. Tina's smile widened. I dare you to tell everyone here what you really think about your marriage. No filter, no politeness, just raw honesty. The circle went quiet. I felt Eli tense beside me, his hand finding mine and squeezing gently. It was meant to be reassuring, but something about the gesture irritated me. Even now, he was trying to manage the situation, to protect me from myself. I stood up, swaying slightly from the cocktails. The city lights blurred around me, and I felt powerful, reckless, alive in a way I hadn't in years. You want the truth? I said, my voice carrying across the rooftop. The truth is that I love my husband, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't settled down so young. A few people laughed nervously. Eli's hand was still in mine, but his grip had loosened. I mean, look at him, I continued, gesturing toward Eli with my free hand. Sweet, reliable, predictable Eli. He's the kind of guy who schedules spontaneity, who thinks a wild Friday night is staying up past 10 to watch a documentary about coding. More laughter now, but it had an edge to it. Derek was grinning, encouraging me with his eyes. Sometimes I think about what it would be like to be with someone who actually surprised me, I said, the words tumbling out faster now. Someone who looked at me like I was still worth pursuing instead of just another item on his to-do list. The laughter died away. Mason was staring at his beer, and several people were looking anywhere but at Eli and me. Honestly, I said, riding the wave of attention and alcohol and recklessness, I'd probably dump Eli for $100 and a guy with a cute smile. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Someone gasped. Derek laughed out loud, and a few others joined in, but it sounded forced now. I felt Eli's hand slip away from mine. Marilla, he said quietly. Just my name, nothing else. I turned to look at him, and the expression on his face sobered me instantly. He wasn't angry. Anger I could have handled. He looked devastated, betrayed, like I'd reached into his chest and crushed something vital. It was just a joke, I said quickly. You know I didn't mean... But Eli was already standing. He set his untouched beer on the table with careful precision, the way he did everything. Excuse me, he said to the group, his voice perfectly polite. I should get going, early morning tomorrow. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something die in his eyes. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator without another word. The circle was silent, except for the sound of the city below and the pounding of my heart. I realized someone had been recording with their phone, and the red light was still blinking. Well, Tina said with forced brightness, that was definitely raw honesty. Derek moved closer, his hand warm on my back. You okay? I nodded, but I wasn't okay. I felt sick and exhilarated and terrified all at once. The attention I'd craved suddenly felt suffocating. I should go after him, I said. Let him cool off, Derek murmured in my ear. He'll get over it. Guys like that always do. But as I watched the elevator doors close on my husband's retreating form, I had the terrible feeling that some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed with time and good intentions. The party continued around me, but the magic was gone. I'd gotten what I wanted. I'd proven I was still dangerous, still capable of shocking people. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the memory of Eli's face, and the knowledge that somewhere in the city below, my husband was driving home alone. The family restaurant was one of those cozy Italian places with checkered tablecloths and photos of the owner's family covering every inch of wall space. Normally, I loved coming here for Janine Voss's birthday dinners. Eli's mother had been celebrating here for the past 5 years, always at the same long table in the back corner, always with the same mix of family and close friends. Tonight felt different. I'd spent extra time getting ready, choosing a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup. My goal was to look like the perfect daughter-in-law, the devoted wife who'd maybe had a little too much to drink at a friend's party, but was fundamentally solid and committed to her family. Eli had barely spoken to me since the rooftop incident 3 days ago. He'd moved his things into the guest room officially, claiming he didn't want to disturb my sleep with his early morning routine. When I'd tried to apologize, he'd listened politely and then asked if I could pick up Hazel from school because he had a client meeting. Everything was perfectly civil and absolutely devastating. "Marilla, dear," Janine Voss said as I approached the table, her smile tight and formal. At 62, Eli's mother was still beautiful, with silver hair and the same grey eyes as her son. She'd always been kind to me, welcoming me into the family with genuine warmth. Tonight, her hug felt like a duty rather than affection. "Happy birthday, Janine," I said, handing her the bouquet of roses I'd picked up on the way. "You look wonderful." "Thank you," she accepted the flowers with the same polite smile. "Eli's saving your seat." I made my way around the table, greeting family members and friends. Ben Voss, Eli's younger brother, gave me a curt nod, but didn't stand to hug me like he usually did. His wife Sarah was friendly enough, but I caught her exchanging a meaningful look with Janine when she thought I wasn't watching. Eli was seated at the far end of the table, Hazel on his lap as he helped her color in a kid's menu. He looked up when I approached, his expression carefully neutral. "Hey," I said softly, taking the empty chair beside him. "How was your day?" "Fine," he replied, turning his attention back to Hazel's artwork. "She's been asking about the sleeping arrangements again." My stomach clenched. "What did you tell her?" "That sometimes parents need space to work through grown-up problems." Hazel looked up at me with serious eyes. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced like Emma's parents?" "No, sweetheart," I said quickly, reaching over to smooth her dark curls. "We're just figuring some things out. Everything's going to be fine." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. The dinner proceeded with forced normalcy. Conversations flowed around me, work gossip, family updates, plans for the upcoming holidays. I participated when spoken to, but I felt like I was watching everything through glass, separated from the warmth and connection I'd always taken for granted. Halfway through the main course, Ben cleared his throat and pulled out his phone. "So, Marilla," he said, his tone casual but his eyes hard. "Interesting video making the rounds on social media." My blood turned to ice. "What video?" "Oh, I think you know." He turned the phone toward me, and there I was in high definition, standing on the rooftop with my arms spread wide, declaring that I'd dumped my husband for $100 and a cute smile. The table went quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, judgment and disappointment radiating from every direction. "That was taken out of context," I said, my voice sounding thin and defensive even to my own ears. "It was just a stupid party game. Everyone knows truth or dare gets out of hand." "Looked pretty clear to me," Ben said, putting the phone away. "But hey, what do I know? I'm just the boring brother who thinks marriage vows actually mean something." "Ben." Eli's voice was quiet but carried a warning. "No, it's fine," I said, anger flaring to life in my chest. "Everyone wants to pile on Marilla, right? God forbid I have a little fun with friends. God forbid I'm not the perfect suburban housewife every second of every day." "Fun?" Janine's voice was sharp. "You call publicly humiliating my son fun?" "It was a joke," I insisted. "A stupid joke that got blown out of proportion. I've apologized to Eli. I don't see why I need to apologize to everyone else for something that has nothing to do with them." "It has everything to do with us," Sarah said quietly. "We're family. When you hurt Eli, you hurt all of us." I looked around the table, seeing the closed faces, the disappointed expressions. Even the friends who weren't related by blood were looking at me like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. "Mommy," Hazel said in a small voice, "why is everyone mad at you?" Before I could answer, there was a commotion near the restaurant entrance. A man in an expensive suit was talking to the hostess, gesturing in our direction. After a moment, he approached our table with confident strides. "Richard Linton," he said, extending his hand to Eli. "Derek's father. I was hoping I could have a word with you." My heart stopped. Richard Linton was a successful businessman, the kind of man who commanded respect in every room he entered. He was also apparently aware of whatever was happening between his son and me. "Of course," Eli said, standing and shaking the older man's hand. "Though I'm not sure what we have to discuss." "Oh, I think you know," Richard said, his tone pleasant but his eyes cold. "Perhaps we could step outside for a moment." I watched in growing panic as the two men walked toward the restaurant's entrance. What could Derek's father possibly want with my husband? And how much did he know about the messages Derek and I had been exchanging? "Well," Janine said once they were out of earshot, "this evening just keeps getting more interesting." I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to collect my thoughts and figure out how to salvage this disaster. In the mirror, I looked pale and shaken, nothing like the confident woman who'd stood on that rooftop 3 nights ago. When I returned to the table, Eli was back in his seat, but his expression had changed. He looked older somehow, more resolved. "Everything okay?" I asked, settling back into my chair. "Fine," he said, but his tone suggested otherwise. Just a friendly conversation. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of strained small talk and meaningful glances. When it came time for birthday cake, Hazel insisted on sitting between Eli and me, as if her small presence could bridge whatever gap had opened between her parents. As we prepared to leave, Janine pulled me aside. "I've known you for 8 years, Marilla," she said, her voice sad rather than angry. "I watched you and Eli fall in love. I've seen how happy you made him, how good you were together. I don't know what's happening with you right now, but I hope you figure it out before you lose something you can't get back." The words hit harder than Ben's accusations or Sarah's disappointment. Janine wasn't attacking me. She was mourning something she could see slipping away. "I love him," I whispered. "I love Eli and Hazel more than anything." "Then start acting like it," she said gently, "because right now you're breaking my son's heart, and I can't stand by and watch that happen." The drive home was silent except for Hazel's chatter from the back seat. She was oblivious to the tension, talking about her cousin's new puppy and asking if we could get ice cream tomorrow. "Can we, Daddy?" she asked as we pulled into our driveway. "Please?" "We'll see, sweetheart," Eli said, and I heard the exhaustion in his voice. As I tucked Hazel into bed, she grabbed my hand and looked at me with worried eyes. "Mommy, are you going to fix things with Daddy?" "I'm trying, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. "I'm really trying." But as I watched Eli gather his things for another night in the guest room, I wondered if trying would be enough to undo the damage I'd caused. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop wondering what Richard Linton had said to my husband in that parking lot. The guest bedroom had become enemy territory. I stood in the doorway, watching Eli pack clothes into an overnight bag with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. 3 days had passed since the disastrous birthday dinner, and the distance between us had grown into a chasm I couldn't seem to cross. "Going somewhere?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Conference in Portland," he said without looking up. "I told you about it last month." I had no memory of him mentioning any conference, but then again, I'd been distracted lately. Derek had been texting more frequently, and I'd found myself looking forward to his messages with an anticipation that felt both thrilling and dangerous. "How long will you be gone?" 3 days. He folded a shirt with hospital corners, the way his mother had taught him. "I'll be back Friday afternoon." I stepped into the room, noting how he'd made the space his own. His books were stacked on the nightstand, his phone charger plugged into the wall outlet. The bed was made with military precision, and his laptop bag sat ready by the door. "Eli, we need to talk about what happened at dinner." "Do we?" He finally looked at me, and I was struck again by how tired he looked. "I think everything that needed to be said was said pretty clearly on that rooftop." "That wasn't me talking. That was the alcohol and Tina's stupid games and what, Marilla? What excuse are we using today?" The quiet anger in his voice stopped me cold. Eli never raised his voice, never lost his temper, but this controlled fury was somehow worse than screaming would have been. "It's not an excuse. I made a mistake, a stupid, thoughtless mistake that I regret every second of every day. He zipped the bag closed and set it on the floor. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you got exactly what you wanted. Attention, excitement, the thrill of being dangerous again. That's not fair, isn't it? He sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped between his knees. When's the last time you looked at me like you actually wanted to be in the same room? When's the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about schedules or bills or what Hazel needs for school? The questions hit like physical blows because I couldn't answer them. When had we stopped talking about dreams and fears and the future we wanted to build together? That's just what happens when you're married, I said weakly. Life gets busy. Kids change things. Life gets busy, he agreed. But that doesn't mean you stop trying. That doesn't mean you start looking for excitement in other people's attention. I'm not Derek Linton, he said simply, and my protest died in my throat. How long, Marilla? How long what? How long have you been talking to him? And don't lie to me. I'm done with lies. My heart hammered against my ribs. We reconnected a few weeks ago. It's innocent, Eli. Just old friends catching up. Old friends. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do old friends usually text at midnight? Do they send messages about missing each other and wondering what might have been? The blood drained from my face. How did you... Your phone was face down on the kitchen counter yesterday morning. It kept buzzing, and I thought it might be an emergency. His voice was perfectly calm, perfectly controlled. Imagine my surprise when I saw messages from Derek talking about how much he enjoyed your private conversation and how he couldn't wait to see me out of the picture. I sank into the chair by the window, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Eli, I swear to you, nothing physical has happened. We've just been talking. Just talking, he repeated, the way you were just talking when you told a room full of people that you'd dump me for pocket change and a smile. I was drunk. I was showing off. I didn't mean any of it. Which part didn't you mean? The part about me being boring and predictable? The part about settling down too young? Or the part about wishing you were with someone who actually surprised you? Each word was a surgical strike, precise and devastating. I realized he'd memorized every syllable of my rooftop confession, that he'd been replaying it in his mind for days. I meant none of it, I whispered. You're not boring. You're steady and reliable, and that's not enough anymore, is it? He stood up, shouldering his laptop bag. You want excitement. You want to feel desired and interesting and young again. I get it, Marilla. I really do. Then why are you leaving? Why are you giving up on us? He paused in the doorway, his back to me. I'm not giving up. I'm protecting myself. And Hazel. Because I won't let her watch her mother destroy this family for the sake of some middle-aged fantasy. The words hit like a slap. How dare you? How dare I what? Point out that you're having an emotional affair, that you're so caught up in reliving your college years, that you're forgetting you have a daughter who needs stability. I would never do anything to hurt Hazel. You already have. He turned to face me, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time since I'd known him. She asked me yesterday if you were going to leave us for the man who makes you laugh at night. Our 7-year-old daughter is worried that her mother is going to abandon her family. The room spun around me. She said that. She hears everything, Marilla. The late-night phone calls, the arguments, the way you light up when your phone buzzes. She's not stupid and she's not deaf. I buried my face in my hands, overwhelmed by shame and guilt, and the terrible realization that I'd been so focused on my own feelings that I'd ignored the damage I was causing to the people I loved most. I'll stop, I said, looking up at him through tears. I'll block Derek's number. I'll delete social media, whatever you need me to do. It's not about what I need you to do, he said sadly. It's about what you want to do. And right now, I don't think you know what that is. He picked up his overnight bag and headed for the door. Eli, please, don't leave like this. I'm not leaving, he said without turning around. I'm taking some time to think. There's a difference. What am I supposed to tell Hazel? Tell her the truth. that Mommy and Daddy are working through some problems, and that sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out. After he left, I sat in the guest room for a long time, surrounded by the faint scent of his cologne and the weight of everything I'd broken. My phone buzzed with a message from Derek, asking if I wanted to grab coffee while Eli was out of town. For the first time in weeks, I didn't respond, but I didn't delete the message either. The courthouse plaza was busier than I'd expected for a Friday morning. People in business suits hurried past, clutching coffee cups and talking on phones, while tourists snapped photos of the imposing granite building behind me. I checked my watch again. 9:43 a.m. Eli's flight had landed an hour ago, and I'd been waiting here since 9:30. My plan was simple: intercept my husband before he could retreat back into his wall of polite distance. 3 days apart had given me clarity about what I wanted, what I was willing to fight for. I'd spent the time cleaning house, literally and figuratively. Derek's number was blocked, his messages deleted. I'd even deactivated my social media accounts, cutting off the temptation to seek validation from old flames and college acquaintances. I'd dressed carefully for this moment. The navy dress was one of Eli's favorites, conservative but flattering, paired with the pearl necklace he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. I wanted to look like the woman he'd fallen in love with, not the reckless stranger who'd humiliated him at that rooftop bar. "Mommy," Hazel's voice cut through the morning bustle. I turned to see my daughter running toward me, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. But she wasn't alone. Eli was walking behind her, flanked by his mother, Janine, and his brother, Ben. All 3 adults looked grim, purposeful, like they were attending a funeral rather than a family reunion. "What are you doing here?" I asked, confusion replacing the nervous excitement I'd felt moments before. "I could ask you the same thing," Eli said quietly. His eyes were different, harder than I'd ever seen them. The exhaustion from our last conversation had been replaced by something that looked like resolve. "I wanted to surprise you, to talk about us, about fixing things." I reached for his hand, but he stepped back slightly. "Eli, I've done a lot of thinking while you were gone. I know what I want now." "Do you?" The voice came from behind me, unfamiliar and official. I turned to see a middle-aged woman in a business suit approaching with a manila envelope in her hand. "Marilla Catherine Voss?" "Yes? You're being served." She pressed the envelope into my hands with practiced efficiency. "Have a good day." My fingers went numb. The envelope felt heavy, ominous, like it contained something that would change everything. Around me, the plaza seemed to slow down, conversations becoming muffled, footsteps echoing strangely. "What is this?" I whispered, though part of me already knew. "Open it," Eli said, and his voice was gentle in a way that made everything worse. With trembling hands, I broke the seal and pulled out the papers inside. The words swam before my eyes: petition for dissolution of marriage, temporary custody order, financial restraining order. "You're divorcing me," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "I'm protecting my family," he replied. "What's left of it?" People were staring now. A small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance, drawn by the obvious drama unfolding in their morning commute. Someone had their phone out, and I realized with horror that this moment, my public humiliation, was being recorded just like that night on the rooftop. "Eli, please," I said, stepping toward him again. "We can work this out. I've changed. I've ended things with Derek completely." "Have you?" Ben's voice was cold. "Because according to the private investigator Eli hired, you met Derek for coffee yesterday afternoon." The world tilted sideways. "That's not... I didn't..." But I had. Derek had shown up at the coffee shop near Hazel's school, claiming he'd heard about Eli being out of town and wanting to check on me. We'd talked for maybe 20 minutes, nothing more than conversation, but I could see how it would look to someone watching from outside. "I can explain," I started, but Eli was shaking his head. "No more explanations," he said. "No more excuses." I'm done, Marilla. Hazel was clinging to Janine's hand, her young face confused and frightened. She didn't understand the legal papers or the adult conversations, but she could feel the finality in her father's voice. What about Hazel? I asked desperately. What about our family? Hazel will be fine, Eli said, kneeling down to our daughter's level. She'll have two parents who love her very much, even if they can't live together anymore. But I love you, I said, and the words came out as a sob. I love you, Eli. I made mistakes, but I love you. He stood slowly, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. Pain and regret and something that might have been love crossed his features. I know you do, he said softly, but love isn't enough anymore. Trust is gone, Marilla. Respect is gone. And without those things, love is just a word we use to justify staying in something that's already dead. The crowd around us had grown larger. I could hear whispers, see pointing fingers, feel the weight of judgment from dozens of strangers who were witnessing the end of my marriage. Please, I whispered one last time. Don't do this here. Not in front of everyone. You chose to make our private life public, he said, and there was no cruelty in his voice, just sadness. This is just the natural conclusion of that choice. A camera flash went off somewhere in the crowd. Tomorrow, I realized, this would be on social media, shared and commented on, and dissected by people who didn't know us, didn't understand the complexity of what had led us to this moment. But maybe that was fitting. I'd started this whole mess by seeking public attention, by prioritizing the opinions of strangers over the feelings of the man who'd loved me unconditionally for 10 years. Eli took Hazel's other hand, and the 3 generations of Voss family began walking away from me. My daughter looked back once, her small face troubled, but Janine gently guided her forward. I stood alone in the courthouse plaza, divorce papers clutched in my shaking hands, surrounded by strangers with their cameras, and whispered commentary. The morning sun felt cold on my face, and I realized that this was what consequence looked like. Not dramatic or cinematic, just quietly devastating. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a wild moment, I thought it might be Eli, reconsidering, giving me one more chance. Instead, it was Derek. Heard about the courthouse drama. Want to grab dinner tonight? I deleted the message without responding and walked slowly toward my car, leaving behind the wreckage of the life I'd destroyed for the sake of excitement I'd never really wanted. The divorce papers rustled in the morning breeze, and I understood with crystal clarity that some mistakes can't be undone, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some love isn't strong enough to survive the weight of betrayal. Behind me, the courthouse stood like a monument to justice served, while ahead of me stretched an uncertain future built on the ashes of choices I couldn't take back.